The all-time leader in sacks isn't Michael Strahan. You might have thought it was, but it's Lawrence Taylor, great player. From 1981 to 1993, 142 sacks in his career. So... Welcome to Just the Stats NFL, the show that covers the NFL statistical leaders from the all-time greats to the current players leading the NFL. I'm Ernie Jennings, your host, and I'm back looking at the last place team from the NFC East. So I'm covering every team in the NFL as we head into the 2025 season, which is only 50 days away. But this will be a wrap of the NFC East. So we'll kick that off with the Giants. The New York Giants finished the season last in the NFC East with a record of 3 wins and 14 losses. At home, they were 1 win and 8 losses. On the road, 2 wins, 6 losses, and in the division, 0-6. So to improve, they're definitely going to have to do better in the division. 0-6 is just not good at all. But as we look at the Giants, how do the Giant players of 2024 stand in relation to the greatest Giant players of all time and to the rest of the entire NFL? Well, that's what we're going to find out right now on this episode of Just the Stats NFL. And as usual, we'll start with the coaches. This goes back almost to the beginning for the coach with the most wins. The team started in 1925. So quite amazing, one of the earliest teams. But Steve Owen, from 1930 to 1953, won 153 games for the New York Giants. Quite a long time ago, so that's a record that's been around a long time. Tom Coughlin, second. He was a coach from 2004 to 2015. He had 102 wins. So very impressive. Probably a huge mistake that the Jaguars let Tom Coughlin go, because as soon as he was gone, went to the Giants, turned them around, and they won Super Bowls. It's just too bad he couldn't have stayed in Jacksonville and done that for the Jaguars. So Tom Coughlin's second all-time in wins with the Giants and tied for first with the Jaguars all-time in wins. Even though he's tied in with wins, he did it in a lot less games than Jack Del Rio did, and has a lot more playoff games and wins than Del Rio did as far as the Jaguars go. But I digress. I do that occasionally when it comes to the Jaguars. But anyway, Tom Coughlin, second. And the name I used to associate with the team, but way back in the past, was Bill Parcells. He was third with 77. But really, over all those years, Steve Owens still has the record from, 72 years ago. And that's not going to change. You have Brian Daboll, the coach currently. He has 18 wins, 32 losses. And it's hard to tell. I mean, when you look at the Giant players and the kind of players he has, is it Daboll's fault that he doesn't have any great players other than Malik Neighbors on offense, especially? I mean, he may be doing the best he can with what he has. So you'd hate to see him getting fired for having bad season after bad season when you're looking at the players he's working with. I mean, last year, we'll look at that as we get through, but quarterback was bad. Running back wasn't that great. You had Malik Neighbors, great player. I think he's going to be great for the NFL and for the Giants. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. So Brian Daboll's a coach currently since 2022, 18 wins, 32 losses. All right, let's look at the offense, and we'll start with the quarterbacks. Eli Manning from 2004 to 2019 is the all-time leading quarterback for the Giants with 57,023 yards. Quite an impressive total for that team. Not quite high enough to get into the top 10, but very close. Phil Simms was second, 1979 to 1993. He had 33,462. Now, Daniel Jones, who was the quarterback and is no longer with the team, he's with Indianapolis Colts now, but he was fifth all time. He had 14,582 yards. They're going to have Russell Wilson, Jameson Winston, Jackson Dart as quarterbacks. Obviously, if Dart is any good and sticks with the team, he'd be the next guy that's going to move up this list. I mean, Russell Wilson's on his last season or two, so he's not going to move up the list very far at all. If he goes even past one season, we'll see. But those are your leading quarterbacks when it comes to yards. When it comes to touchdowns, again, it's Eli Manning had 366 touchdowns and Phil Simms had 199. Top two for the team. Interesting, I'm just looking at this. Fran Tarkington was fourth from 1967 to 1971 with 103 touchdowns passing for the New York Giants. And I just always associate him with the Minnesota Vikings, and we'll look at that when we get to it. So interesting. Now, when it comes to interceptions, it won't be Eli Manning. It is actually. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that so quickly. Eli Manning does lead the team with 244 interceptions. Quite a big lead over Charlie Connerly from 1948 to 1961. Did hold the record until Eli Manning came along. He had 167 interceptions. So Eli Manning's going to have the record just about in every category when it comes to the New York Giants. And he'll hold all these for a long time to come. As you can tell by, like I said, there's nobody in the wings that's going to make any difference on that. And the last category we'll look at is, now this is where Eli Manning doesn't have the number one spot. Phil Simms does, and that's in sacks. Phil Simms was sacked 477 times in his career with the Giants from 1979 to 1993. Eli Manning was second with 411. So those are the top two when it comes to being sacked. So those are your quarterbacks. Really, it's the Eli Manning show as far as the Giants go. All right, let's look at the running backs. Tiki Barber, number one all time, from 1997 to 2006, 10,449 yards. It is something when you have a team that's been since 1925, one player with over 10,000 yards, actually one player over 7,000 yards. I mean, the second best player, Rodney Hampton, from 1990 to 1997, had 6,897 yards. What a huge difference. It's just interesting that you have a team that's been around for so long and no one's really up near the top when it comes to yards or rushing in any category. And we'll look at the touchdowns. Now, this is interesting because Brandon Jacobs had the most touchdowns for the team rushing, 60. Tiki Barber second with 55. Now, Brandon Jacobs was fifth in yardage, but first in touchdowns. So obviously used much more than even Tiki Barber was to have 5 more touchdowns rushing than Tiki Barber did. But Brandon Jacobs led the team in touchdowns. And really, like I said, no one's really near the top in these categories of all-time numbers. So we'll move on to receiving. Look at the wide receivers, tight ends, see who's up there in that category. And that would be, as far as receptions go, Amani Toomer from 1996 to 2008 had 668 receptions to lead the team. And fascinating is that Tiki Barber, the running back who leads the team as far as rushing goes in yardage, is also number 2 all time in receptions with 586. So quite an impressive player for the New York Giants. But again, these numbers pale. 668 receptions is the leading wide receiver all time for the New York Giants. I mean, that's one of the lower numbers for a team that's been around for, 100 years. But those are your top two. I mean, they had Odell Beckham, but he didn't hang around long enough. He had 390. When it comes to tight ends, Jeremy Shockey from 2002 to 2007 had 371 receptions. That's the top tight end, and he was number 6th on the team all time as far as receptions go. And when we're looking at yards, we have Amani Toomer again with 9,497 yards. Odell Beckham Jr. is second with 5,476 yards. So those are your top two. Quite a gap between them and everybody else as far as yards go. Tiki Barber is fourth with 5,183 to be the number one running back in that category. And then as far as tight ends, despite Jeremy Shockey leading in receptions, it's actually Bob Tucker from 1970 to 1977 had 4,376 yards. He averaged 13.4 yards a reception, a couple yards more than Jeremy Shockey did, which is why he ends up being there. When you're looking at current players, well, right now it's Darius Slayton. He's 18th all time with 3,897 yards. So he has a chance this year to move up the list a little ways. We'll just see how many yards he gets. I mean, really, I'd say Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson are the top two wide receivers, and Darius Slayton would be third. So how many yards he gets, we'll see. But he doesn't need more than 600 to move all the way up to 11th, from 18th to 11th. So he could be the number one guy to watch as far as up the list. But obviously, it's going to be Malik Neighbors who could jump this chart at 1,000 yards a clip and move quite a ways up the list as we get into the season. And then when we're looking at touchdowns, again, Amani Toomer, number one receiver all the way around, yards, receptions, and touchdowns. He had 54 touchdowns in his career. Now, Joe Morrison, from 1959 to 1972, a halfback, had 47 to lead backfield. And then Aaron Thomas, you had a different tight end for each number here, whether it was receptions or yards, and now touchdowns. Aaron Thomas from 1962 to 1970 as a tight end had 35 touchdown receptions. So a little bit of variety there in that category. And again, so there's nobody really up this list at all. Darius Slayton, like I said, is currently on the team. He's got 21 touchdowns, which puts him at 22nd. So we'll see how far he moves. I wouldn't expect him to get more than, 4 or 5 touchdowns. And if he did get 5, he could move up as far as 17th. But we'll have to watch that this upcoming season. So those are your wide receivers. And we'll move on to the defense. Look at some of the defensive players. We'll start with interceptions. As far as interceptions, well, this is where the team does shine. Emlen Tunnell from 1948 to 1958 had 74 interceptions. And he's second all time in the NFL behind Paul Krause, who had 81 interceptions. Emlen Tunnell had 79. So obviously he had only 5 on his other team, but he had 74 with the Giants. By far the lead. Jimmy Patton from 1955 to 1966 had 52. Those are your top two. You have nobody from this current century except Corey Webster in 12th place from 2005 to 2013. He had 20. So there's nobody on the list that's currently playing anywhere near the top. So it'll be a long time before you see anybody possibly move up this list. And nobody will break that record. I doubt seriously that which I always say this interception record will not be broken. I just don't see it. Rod Woodson from 1987 to 2003 had 71. That's the closest really anybody's come. So I just don't see it getting broken. The rules makes it so difficult for a defensive player to get an interception the way they used to in the past. But that's the leaders when it comes to interceptions. Now, obviously, we'll get to the more recent players when we're talking about tackles for loss. And as far as tackles for loss go, Michael Strahan, obviously, number one, 131 tackles for loss for the New York Giants to lead the team. And quite a big lead over Justin Tuck, who played from 2005 to 2013. He had 88. Michael Strahan played from 1993 to 2007. So they overlapped a couple of years, but big gap between the two of them. Currently, there's really nobody. Dexter Lawrence is the number one player on the team right now. He's 10th. Been on the team since 2019. He's only got 36, though. So he's not catching Michael Strahan. He's not going to get up even in the top, probably not even the top 5. But we'll see. There's a big gap from the top 5 to the next ones down. But it is a big gap. And then you also have Micah McFadden. He's only been on the team 3 years now. He's the guy we might want to watch. He's 18th now, but he has 26. So he's not that far. He's 10 behind Dexter Lawrence, but Dexter Lawrence been on the team since 2019. So we're already in a brief period of time. McFadden's moved up the list pretty good. Same goes with Kayvon Thibodeau. Same time. Both him and McFadden both have 26. So those will be a couple of players to watch this coming year and see how well they do when it comes to tackles for loss. Now, when we're talking about sacks, the all-time leader in sacks isn't Michael Strahan. You might have thought it was, but it's Lawrence Taylor, great player, from 1981 to 1993, 142 sacks in his career. So, just to show you how close this is, Michael Strahan was second from 1993 to 2007 with 141.5, a half a sack difference in his career behind Lawrence Taylor. How close is that? Those are your top two. No one else is even over 100 when it comes to sacks. That's pretty impressive. And with 142 sacks, Lawrence Taylor on the unofficial list, which started in 1960, is 9th, and Michael Strahan is 10th. When we're looking at the official list, Lawrence Taylor is not on the list because the list started in 1982. So you drop one whole year off of Lawrence Taylor's total, it drops him out of the top 6. Michael Strahan is 6th with 141.5. Which I don't think is right, and I prefer the unofficial list because they do document it through video, through playbooks, through all kinds of records they can find. And one day the NFL will, I believe, accept these records that go all the way back to 1960. But those are your top two. Very great players on defense. All right, let's move on over to the single season records and look at the quarterbacks again. Here's where Eli Manning stands out. He has the top 4 positions as far as yards in a single season, and actually has 8 of the top 10. So pretty impressive. But in 2011, he had his best season by far, by 500 yards over the second best total. But in 2011, he had 4,933 yards in a single season. That, like I said, he never matched that. He didn't even come close. Never came closer than 501 yards. So when you're looking at that and comparing it, that's an impressive number. And like I said, this past season, when we're looking at the quarterback for this season, Daniel Jones really, obviously only played 10 games, so he's not going to be anywhere near this top of this list for this past season. He only had 2,070 yards in 2024. Really not that great. 2022, he had his best season, and that was only 3,205 yards. So when you're looking at, let me get this up here real quick. When you're looking at this past season, Daniel Jones, like I said, had 2,070 yards, but he only started 10 games. And then Drew Lock played 5, and Tommy DeVito a couple. So no one was anywhere near the top. I mean, Joe Burrow led the NFL with 4,918 yards, and Daniel Jones was 28th in the NFL with his 2,070 yards. So nothing impressive. When it comes to touchdowns in a single season, Y.A. Tittle still holds the record. Set the record in 1963 with 36 touchdowns in a single season. Did that in 13 games. Eli Manning second in 2015. He had 35. Those are your top two. So Y.A. Tittle still holds the record 62 years later. I don't see it being broken this year by whoever is the quarterback, and probably because there won't be just one quarterback this season. I mean, unless Russell Wilson really shines throughout the entire season, and even if he did, he's not going to throw 36 touchdowns. But that's the number one total. Drew Lock this past season only had 8 touchdowns, way down the list. And when you're looking at the entire NFL, Daniel Jones finished 34th as far as touchdowns go. Joe Burrow, again, with 43, led the NFL as far as that goes. So, big gap. Eli Manning does hold the record, interestingly, over some of the guys from the past as far as interceptions go. In 2013, he threw 27 interceptions. Worst season he had by 2. He had 18 touchdowns. That's a terrible season for him, really, because in 2010, he threw 25 interceptions, but he still had 31 touchdowns. So 27 interceptions and 18 touchdowns is terrible. Really a lot of doubt around his ability at that point in time, but he did all right after that. He came back and had a better year the next year. So 27's the number. Daniel Jones had 7, but again, he only played in 10 games. In the NFL last season, Baker Mayfield and Kirk Cousins both had 16 interceptions to lead the NFL. So 27, you can see, is quite a huge number. Now, when looking at sacks, most times sacked in a single season, that's Phil Simms. In fact, Phil Simms, unfortunately for him, holds the top 3 spots. And he's the only one been sacked more than 50 times. But in Phil Simms was sacked 55 times in 1984. That was the most he was sacked, 55 times, which is a lot. Not near the top of the record all time, but still a lot. This past season, Caleb Williams was sacked 68, and then C.J. Stroud was 52. So then Caleb Williams led the league in sacks by way too many times. Daniel Jones was quite a ways down the list, but he only played 10 games and he was sacked 29 times. So to finish 21st in the NFL in that category, quite a few times to be sacked in 10 games. All right, let's look at the rushing records for the team. In a single season, Tiki Barber holds the top 3 spots, which is interesting because he holds them over somebody as great as Saquon Barkley. But Tiki Barber in 2005 had 1,860 yards. There was a 3-year period there where Tiki Barber was very impressive. In fact, where he had 1,860, 1,662, and 1,518. So 3 years in a row where he had 1,500 plus yards. That's impressive because you have a lot of rushing attempts when you do that, and a lot of times players will drop off the next year after they've had 300 plus rushing attempts. But he had some good numbers there. But 1,860 yards is the most. This past season, as far as running backs go, look at this real quick. When it comes to rushing yards, Tyrone Tracy had 839 yards to lead the team. Devin Singletary was second with 437. Those are your top 2. And then the 3 quarterbacks came in behind that. But they really do need some help there, and they're not going to get it. Not right away anyway. You still have Tracy and Singletary. They did pick up Cam Scatterbo, but we'll see how that works out for him. And so with 839 yards this past season, it paled into Saquon Barkley's 2005 yards, which is unfortunate for the Giants that he's doing that for the Eagles. While with the Giants, he had 1,312 yards, was his best season with the Giants. With 839 yards by Tyrone Tracy, that was only good enough to finish 25th in the NFL. So not really that impressive. Not a bad yards per attempt with 4.4. So that's not too bad. It's just the team as a whole on offense, minus Malik Neighbors, just they have a lot of work ahead of them. All right. And then as far as touchdowns all time in a single season, that was Joe Morris in 1985, had 21 touchdowns in a single season. Now that's a good number. That's good enough to put him 6th all time in the NFL as far as touchdowns in a single season. The record's held by LaDainian Tomlinson with 28. So to finish 6th is really impressive. I saw Joe Morris's name a lot, but not near the top. But when it comes to touchdowns, he had the 2 of the top 3 spots when it comes to touchdowns, but no one's even close. Joe Morris in 1985 had 21. Brandon Jacobs in 2008 had 15. So really no one's come close to the 21 touchdowns. And that's an impressive number, 21. I mean, last season, Derrick Henry, Jamar Gibbs, James Cook all had 16 to lead the NFL. So no one really came close to 20. This past season, when it comes to touchdowns, again, 5. Tyrone Tracy had 5 and Devin Singletary had 4. That was it. So really, they weren't scoring that much as a whole. So that's kind of numbers you're going to get. Now, when we're looking at the receiving category, obviously was Malik Neighbors believe it or not, set the Giants all-time record for most receptions in a single season by 2. He beat out Steve Smith, who in 2009 had 107 receptions. And then Odell Beckham was 3rd in 2016. He had 101. The only players with 100 or more receptions in their entire history of the team. While Malik Neighbors was racking up 109 receptions just quietly, and you don't hear much about him, but Wan'Dale Robinson had 93 this past season to finish 5th all-time for the Giants as far as most receptions in a single season. So he's really actually quite a good receiver. Yardage-wise, he just catches a lot of pass for not a lot of yards. A lot of dink and dunk type of thing. He's only averaging 7.5 yards a reception for a wide receiver. That's one of the lowest numbers I've ever seen for a wide receiver. That's something you'd see for running backs, that kind of yards per reception. But he had 93. We'll see how they do this coming season. And Malik Neighbors with his 109 receptions this past season, we'll look at that, comparing that to the entire NFL, finished 5th in the NFL with 109 receptions, behind Jamar Chase, who had 127 to lead the NFL. Now, when it comes to yards, though he had 109 receptions, which led, rookie wide receivers, but not tight ends. Victor Cruz in 2011 had 1,536 yards. That's the most ever by a New York Giant when it comes to yardage. He averaged 18.7 yards a reception, which is why he did it. Odell Beckham was second in 2015 with 1,450. Close, but not close enough. With 1,000, let's look at how Malik Neighbors only finished 9th all-time as a Giant as far as his yardage goes, 1,204 yards, which was good enough to put him at 7th, just behind Jerry Jeudy. Jamar Chase, again, was first with 1,708 yards. Brian Thomas is a rookie, as is Malik Neighbors, led all rookies in receiving yardage with 1,282 yards. Brock Bowers, another rookie. There's 3 rookies here in the top 10. Actually, I should say 4. You got Ladd McConkey, too, as far as yardage goes. So quite an impressive group of rookies. Now, Brock Bowers is a tight end, but still very impressive. And then when looking at TDs all time, Odell Beckham Jr. in 2015 had 13, and Homer Jones back in 1967 had 13 touchdown receptions in a single season. So that's the most. And I always look at this, even though Odell Beckham tied it in 2015, I say it's still a record that's been around and hasn't been broken in 58 years. So 57 years going into 58 years. And now this is a record I think that it's possible for Malik Neighbors to break. But we'll see. I mean, it's not that far out there. All right. And when we're going back, and we'll go back at the receptions and look at, as far as running backs go, Saquon Barkley, number 1 running back as far as receptions go, with 91. In 2018, he had 91 receptions. That's a huge amount for a running back. And then as far as tight ends go, Jeremy Shockey in 2002 had 74 receptions to be the most as far as the tight end goes. And then when we're looking at touchdowns, just jump to that real quick. Homer Jones, left end, kind of an odd player. These players back in the 60s had different positions, but as far as tight ends go, Aaron Thomas in 1967 had 9 touchdowns, along with Joe Walton, who did it in 1962. These are tight ends. The best is only 9. So really nobody impressive as far as that goes. In the NFL last season, Jamar Chase had 17. Malik Neighbors had 7. But Jamar Chase led the NFL with 17. So with only 7, this is a little area. And obviously the Giants were just not that great on offense, period. But Malik Neighbors ended up finishing 21st with that 7 TDs. All right, so those are your receivers. That's your offense, basically. And we'll finish up with the defense here. Look at we'll start with interceptions this past season. And the leader all time was Jimmy Patton in 1958. He had 11, and an Otto Schnellbacher in 1951 also had 11. Those are your top 2. So when we're looking at the team this year, as far as interceptions go, this is sad. In reality, they had 5 players who had 1 interception. That's it. That's it. 5 players with 1. So we're not looking at anything too impressive as far as single season numbers. So I don't know how that's going to get much better this next season, but we'll see. I'm sure somebody can get 2. But really, 1. There's been a couple of teams, and you can tell they're just rough for them on defense. When you only have, you're not getting any turnovers. 5 interceptions in 17 games. Now, when it comes to tackles for loss, the all-time leader is Michael Strahan, who had 24 in 2001. Jason Pierre-Paul had 23 in 2011, as well as Michael Strahan had 23 in 2003. So those are your top 2 numbers. Those numbers are good enough, at least the 24, to get Michael Strahan in the top 9 with 24. J.J. Watt is all-time leader in tackles for loss with 39. But 24 is a good number. There's just not even that many players that get that number. This past season, Brian Burns had 17 to lead the team. 17 is not bad. Micah McFadden was second with 8. Him and Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau all had 8. But 17 by Brian Burns. So pretty good number. I didn't even look at who led the NFL in interceptions because none of the Giants were even close. But when it comes to the tackles for loss with Brian Burns is 17. Myles Garrett for Cleveland had 22. Brian Burns finished in 6th with the 17. So not bad as far as that goes. And then we'll look at one more category, and that's sacks. And nobody even had double digits. Dexter Lawrence had 9 to lead the team. And you're looking at NFL all-time records. Well, this is where the Giant players, Michael Strahan, does stand out as far as sacks goes. Like I said, if you're looking at unofficial records, Al Baker's number 1 with 23 sacks, which he did in 1978. But if you're looking at the unofficial record, Michael Strahan, along with T.J. Watt, lead the NFL. That official record began in 1982. Michael Strahan in 2001 had 22.5 sacks. T.J. Watt had 22.5 in 2021. Those are your top 2 all-time players. So pretty good numbers. Lawrence Taylor is 8th on the list if you're going on the official list with 20.5, which he did in 1986. Another Giant there. Impressive numbers. But Michael Strahan's the top of the list for the Giants. So they had a couple of good players on defense. Now, Dexter Lawrence only had 9. Now, Brian Burns had 8.5. So he led the team in tackles for loss and was second in sacks. So pretty good player for them this past season. But with 9 sacks, that puts way down the list. as far as the NFL, tied for 18th in sacks. So an area of where much improvements need. In fact, the whole defense needs some improvement. You have 5 interceptions, no one over 10 sacks. So an area for a lot of improvement. But that explains why the team finished with only 3 wins. Really not anybody on offense that is great. Malik Neighbors is great, but when you have Daniel Jones throwing to him, it makes it difficult. And when he's the only player on the team that a defense has to pay attention to, and he still caught a incredible amount of receptions, but it's a long way to go for the Giants. For an outlook for the New York Giants, well, the odds makers have them 5.5 wins in 2025. That's possible. I mean, they had 3 wins with bad quarterback play. And so you don't really see a lot of improvement on the offense. I mean, they did pick up Jackson Dart, but when is he going to play? And how big of a difference is he going to really make? I don't know. They did grab Russell Wilson, and how well he'll play is a mystery. But even if he is an older player, he's got a much better arm than Daniel Jones. He'll get it down the field. They also picked up Jameson Winston, who I really actually like, except that he can be a turnover machine, but he definitely will throw that ball down the field and make every effort he can to get it to Malik Neighbors and Robinson. So 5.5 wins, I don't know. I think it's going to be difficult. You got improvements in the entire division. They didn't win a game in the division last season, even against Dallas, who only had 7 wins themselves. I don't know if they can make 6 wins. I'm going to put them at under. I'm going to say they only get 4 or 5 wins, 1 extra win, maybe 2. I mean, Russell Wilson's definitely an improvement. But how long is he going to be the starting quarterback? That's another question. And they have the same running backs. I mean, you could see some differences if Jackson Dart shines, Cam Scatterbo comes out and shines and takes over the running game from Tracy and Singletary and is a big improvement. I don't know. Then you have Malik Neighbors, obviously. So, but beyond that, it's just a team that has a lot more work to do on offense to have a team that's effective. So I'm going to put them at 4 or 5 wins this next season. So as we wrap up the NFC East, we're looking at the entire division. And honestly, I think it's going to finish the way, I hate to say that because you want to see some kind of change if you're one of the other teams, except for the Eagles. But I think the division is going to finish the same way. Eagles first, Commanders second, Cowboys third, and the Giants in fourth. I just think that's the way it's going to finish again. I don't see the Giants having ability to improve enough to even take over the third position. Quarterback-wise, the other 3 teams have quarterbacks that are just so much better. I mean, Russell Wilson was good in his, 5-10 years ago, but now he's just a good to hold down the job until Jackson Dart's ready to play. And there's no guarantee that Jackson Dart is going to be a quarterback good enough to carry this team. So we'll just have to see. So that's your NFC East. Like I said, I think the Eagles are going to hang on and outpace even the Commanders this next season. Next up is one of the stronger divisions in the NFC and the entire NFL, and that's the NFC North. We'll look at them the next time we come and look at the teams. So stick around as I continue through the NFC so that you can hear about the greatest players of your favorite team. If you want to check out my previous podcasts on the AFC, I've already done those. You can just go to and listen to those. I appreciate everybody listening. And I hope you would like these podcasts and subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, corrections, anything, you can reach me at Facebook, X, or Instagram at Just the Stats NFL. So with that is a wrap for this episode of Just the Stats NFL. And so until next time, I'm out.